There's a lot of great discussion happening on these videos, especially this last one I posted. I truly did not expect it to blow up as much as it did. So thank you to like everybody that's tuning in and just engaging, especially people in the comments. It's very, very interesting to hear people's opinions and thoughts and critiques. I'm probably going to make a kind of like philosophy response to some of the stuff that's being said, but just in terms of like CAGED, let's just jump straight in here. There's a lot of stuff that I kind of want to talk about or address or echo that people are saying in the comments, because I think they're either really great topics or interesting ones to kind of think about or postulate on. I recognize that I made a lot of hyperbolic statements, like you don't have to like wipe away everything you've ever thought about before. I don't mean that literally. I mean, if something's not clicking, maybe think about it in this new way and forget the stuff that is causing a lot of friction. Ultimately, we should just focus on the things that make music flow easier and better. And if somebody offers you a better way, then great. But I'm just going to rattle down through some of the comments that I received. People were saying, like, don't think about it as the E, think about it as the F. And, I mean, that's literally just taking this open E shape and turning it into a bar chord. That's all that really is. And so if you want to think about E as F, I think that's fine. There's the kind of the open position for F. I'm going to try to, probably in post, I'll put up all of these kind of graphics. It's going to be a lot of work for me, but I'm doing it for you guys because I care. I think E and F are basically interchangeable. It's just how you want to think about it. I think that's totally fine. Somebody said that this only works for bar chords, but when I have a bar chord like that, if we're using the E or the F shape and we're playing a G chord, so using the E shape, but the tonic, the center, is a G here at the 3rd fret. What I had showed in that first video is just thinking about the top strings, and I did that on purpose because a lot of melody, in my opinion, is being made on those top 3 strings, and you can use triads as a really great tool to make melodies and chordal voicings and all this stuff. It's just a really good stepping stone. But of course, there is more than just ace for the entirety of the neck. But when you're just starting out, I think those 3 triads really are a great place to start. But then there's a lot more information that we can add, and obviously there's more than 3 strings, right? We have the B, the G, and the D. I saw a comment where somebody's like, this is where you should be thinking about your triads. And the reality is you should be thinking about your triads everywhere. If you master these top 3 strings, move on to the next 3, the next set. I can sit here and be like, in these 3 positions for the top 3 triad, right, that I showed in my first video, I can, because I've played a while and thought about these things and practiced and studied, I can immediately move down to the D, the G, and the B. Right? I can do that basically instantly. And so maybe think about things in groups of 3 once you're ready to move on to the next stage, right? That video I posted was just stage 1 for CAGED. Just a way to get in there and start understanding it. But there's a lot of ways that you can make CAGED work for you. And if this works for someone, it might not work for another, and we're just trying to find what works for people. So, right, I think the goal is to be able to play CAGED everywhere within a chord, everywhere on the neck. So in that E position for a G chord, that's the top, right? That would be the next kind of shape, that next group of 3, and then the A, the D, and the G, right? Which is literally like the same shape as the E shape, right? That's an E. Here it is. So, and then the very bottom, which is kind of just like a power chord at that point. But then if you start deconstructing and I'm just talking about the E shape here, if you start deconstructing things and start learning chord intervals, if that is an interest to you, which I don't think you have to do, but I think it's a good thing once you master the shapes. All right, let me just address this. I think learning shapes at first and understanding the pitches and creating good relative pitch is a perfectly fine place to start. I don't think you need to start with scales. I don't think you need to start with note, like the actual note notation, musical notation, A, B, C, D. I don't think you need to do that stuff. If you can accurately hear where you are and recognize where you're at, and you can start playing music, that's fine. I think all of these things that people are commenting or talking about can come later. There's nothing wrong with starting simple and starting with shapes. People will rag on you for using shapes, but if you can sit there and make beautiful melody, who cares? I know lots of people that know a lot of theory, but it sounds like scales, right? So that's an important thing to talk about. But where I'm getting with this is once you kind of have the understanding of these note groupings, then you can start to be like, okay, well, in this triad, you have the 1 is on top, the 5 in the major third. And if that doesn't make sense, it's okay. But for people that are ready to move on to this stage, this is kind of the next progression. You're like, okay, I understand. And then maybe in this next group, okay, well, that's also the 1. So 1, major 3, 5. Okay. And then this is an octave of the 1. So this would be like a 1. And here's the 5. Okay, so the only thing that's happening in this chord is a 1 and a 3 and a 5. And in my opinion, if you know that you're playing a G, I think knowing that a major chord consists of a 1, a major third, and a 5 is more important than knowing the notes themselves. I think knowing the notes themselves, everyone in the neck, can be the last step for mastering the fretboard, but this is a good middle step. It's just understanding the chord intervals as they relate to each other. Like I said, I think having really good relative pitch, so you can kind of play around. I don't know what notes I'm playing, the actual note names, but I'm making music, you know. It's harder on an acoustic guitar. Anywho, then you can start to create these chord voicings that I think transcend just the strict kind of blocky nature of a caged chord, right? You can start doing, right? Like it sounds more like classical, where you're deconstructing the chord to its more core kind of values of 1, 3, and 5, and then choosing the intervals that you want to play, right? And that's how kind of, in my opinion, how you get towards that Eric Johnson sound where he kind of goes like, where he does those kind of like interval types of things. Which is a beautiful sound. Anywho, I'm just showing what's possible. So that's one thing I wanted to kind of, there's two things, right? There was the, if F works for you, great. Same thing as E. I think the note groupings, right? There's more than just the top triad, but that's a good place to start because now you can play the next 3 groupings in those same locations, right? The other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about, and this is like the big one, this is kind of the crux of the entire video, is people were giving me a lot of feedback, let's use that word, on my opinion about the C and the D being the same. And, you know, the open D is this. And if you use that as a bar chord for a G, because we've been using G as our chord center, it's this shape, which I don't really use that often. And the point that I'm trying to make here, right, is you can do the C shape for a G, right? So that was the D shape. You can do the C shape, and you still have that same note that the D shape has. It's in the bar chord. So to me, this and this are exactly the same, and they sound to me exactly the same. Sure, you can play a D quickly by having this kind of sound, but you're not having a 1, 3, and a 5. You're only having 2 of those 3 notes because you have an octave here. you need this top, and it's just kind of an awkward position. But still, even with this note down here, the top of it is the exact same as the C shape. So that's what I'm saying. People keep bragging on me the D and the C are different. They're really not. They're really not that different on the top of the chord, right? If we're talking about making melodies and stuff and how I think about them functionally. You know, I don't really play the D. I don't think about it in the same position on the neck. Sorry, that was a completely random chord. I don't think about it in the same position in the neck when I'm playing it on the lower strings. So that's just something. I mean, you can hear it at the beginning of it there. I don't know if I have that much more I want to say. And, you know, like there's some application to it, but like maybe it's just my preference. I just don't like as much as, because I can just put it on the bottom if I want. I just feel like this C bar chord has more color than this version of a D. And I'm talking about positions, right? I'm playing a G chord, but I'm using the D position and the C position, talking about them. So that's kind of my that's my spiel about the D position. You know, I don't see that much value in it. Maybe that's just my opinion. I think you can get away with, you know, playing that kind of barred version. And somebody also commented that this only works for bar chords, but it's like, I don't really know what other type of chords we're talking about, because you could deconstruct a bar chord at any point, like I was just showing you. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the G shape, right? I got a lot of people saying that they like the G shape because it roots them in like the kind of major pentatonic sound. So if I choose like a different key like C, which for me that E position is just like how I think about a major chord in its first position, it sounds like a lot of people, they think of it like this, which is interesting to me because I don't think about it like that. That's the bar chord version of the G shape. So, you know, use your ear. Does this and this sound very different? I don't think so. But I also have a very specific way of thinking about the neck because I think in shapes. And to me, knowing that the relative minor is, you know, 3 frets down from your major chord in this E position, this E kind of formation, I just view it maybe as like a minor 7 chord where you're kind of barring and you're kind of omitting. Sure, you can add this at the bottom. I think there's a lot of validity to that. You know, and it does make sense to me that if you're rooting from the bottom like that, you have your major pentatonic right there. I think there's a lot of validity in that. So when I said you can get rid of the D and the G position, I'm not saying it as like they're not important or there aren't things that are useful for it. I just was offering a solution to people where it wasn't making that much practical sense. But you know, from the reality is like I probably do use all these types of different voicings without really thinking about the shapes that other people think about. You know, I know that the relative minor is here and the relative minor and the major are their, you know, brother sister chords. So maybe that's just the way my brain thinks about it. And I think this kind of highlights the whole thing where there's going to be a million voices telling you a million different ways to think about music. And I don't think any single one of them is correct. I do think that, in my opinion, focusing on scales is not the way. I think music fundamentally is listening first. And if you can play the things that you want to hear that you've developed from listening through shapes that is just as valid as being able to do it with notes. And people will rag on guitar players because we learn our instrument differently than somebody that learns a piano, but the structure of a piano is fundamentally different. Once you learn your notes in one area, you can move octaves symmetrically. That's not true for guitar. I do think changing keys is easier on guitar because you can just shift the position of your fingering, which you can't do on piano. But, you know, when people are talking about, oh yeah, the major scales, all the white keys, we don't have that luxury as guitar players. Jonathan Kreisberg is this amazing jazz guitarist, and he has this video that I think everybody should watch, that it says like why guitar players are crazy. And it's because you can play the same notes in all these different positions on the neck. And that's not true on a piano. You have one place to play one pitch. You can't play it somewhere else, the exact same frequency. But on a guitar, you can. You know, we have all these different places to play the exact same note. They're same frequency, but the timbre and the tonal quality is different, you know? So that's why we have, in my opinion, more options as guitar players. As it's liberating in a way, but it's also, it's hard to navigate. I think that's the reality. So, you know, I'm trying to be the devil's advocate and be in the middle here and show you guys shortcuts, because the guitar can be very difficult, especially when you're starting out. And I think a lot of these people maybe don't remember how tough it is when people are starting. And I think we as guitar players, we are such a judgmental community. We need to make more space for letting people figure out things. And if we have ways that make that easier for people and allow things to click, then I think that's a beautiful thing. So that's just all I want to say. You know, I've been playing guitar for a long time, and I let the guitar tell me things sometimes. I always knew that the bottom of the C shape, you could play it like this. I've always known that. But I had always been dissatisfied with how a D sounds in the open position. I just don't like it. I just think it sounds very trite. A lot of times I just play this kind of suspended because I think it sounds better. But I just feel like an open D is missing a lot of low-end information. And for some reason, I just didn't connect that you can play the bottom of a C chord a whole step up, right? For a D, and it creates just this beautiful, and you can fret this. What a beautiful chord, right? A nice, rich, beautiful D. It's the D I've been looking for in this open position. And so a lot of times when I'm playing with somebody that's singing, you know, if I need to play, if I need to go to this D, I can land on that triad chord formation. But I didn't find that out until I've been playing for, I don't know, 17, 18 years. Is that a problem? No. I think that's cool. I think it means that even these simple things that are right in front of us can show up at any time. And maybe all this time I was spending learning how to do other stuff, you know, that's just what I was focusing on the time. And when the universe was ready to bless me with this understanding, there it is. I don't need to force myself to cram all this knowledge all at once and try to memorize everything. Music's it's not about memorizing, right? It's just about like discovery and the joy of that process. And you know, if you can memorize some shapes to get you to what you hear quicker, then good. You can always fill in the blanks later. So I think that's mainly all I wanted to talk about with this kind of caged continued video. There's validity to learning all 5 shapes. There's applications for all of them. You may stumble into some of them later on without even realizing that you're doing caged. But we all need a place to start, and I think those triads are a good place to start, and then you can move on to the next set in each position, right? And if you really want to, you can add in these other positions. But the reality is, I never use the D. Is that a problem of mine? No, not really, because the bottom of this D for me is, I'm playing a G. The bottom of the D shape is just the beginning of this chord for me. So, right, and then this note for me is over here. So it's just kind of the way that I think about it. Good luck, and let me know if you guys have inspiration for other topics. Every video I put out, I'm getting through to more people. I've been talking about how I want to do I want to get my membership kind of program beefed up on YouTube so I can start doing live streams and live guitar hangs with people. If you like my electric tones, I sell my tones on through my description. Just hit me up, ask me stuff. Just keep things civil. I get a lot of amazing comments, but I do get some pretty negative stuff. And at the end of the day, I'm just doing this for fun. It's just free information for you guys, because I like hearing people get better at music. So just keep things chill, and I'll keep things kind of like improv and natural. There's a lot of pretty like manufactured content on YouTube, so if that's your thing, go for it. I'm going to keep things pretty natural, but let me know some other stuff you guys want to talk about or questions you have, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, thanks. Good luck. Bye.